Mayor Michael Hancock won his re-election for his third and final term as Denver's mayor on Tuesday night, defeating opponent Jamie Giellis with 56% of the vote. In his victory speech, Mayor Hancock announced that the election was a job evaluation for him and noted that community engagement was one of the things he planned to work on. Patty, now that we look back at this election, and it was a crazy May, 4 weeks of a nutty runoff election, did Mayor Hancock do more things to win the election, or did Jamie Giellis do more things to lose the election?
Well, Mayor Hancock did about 2 million things to win the election. That's how much he outspent Jamie Giellis by on this. So there's no question the get out the vote thing worked for him. Didn't work for her. But the real evaluation of his first 2 mayoral terms was May 7th. When instead he got 38.6% of the vote. If everyone thought he had done such a great job as mayor, there wouldn't have been a runoff. He would have gotten more than 50% of the vote. He got 38.6%, which is not a stunning approval rating for an incumbent mayor. Had there been a stronger candidate whose name had been in the news more, as his or her, if Robin Kanish, say, had decided she was going to run in February 2018 when the Leslie Branch Weiss news came out, if other people had decided they were going to risk going against an incumbent, I think we would have a new mayor today. I think Jamie Giellis ran a very uneven campaign, but she was new to this, and look how close she actually came. Although ultimately it was 11, 12 points off, the fact that she scared them enough to put $2.7 million into a third-term campaign for an incumbent, unbelievable phone bank actions, what they did to get out the vote, and the dirtiest campaign in recent memory, and Hancock threw the first mud. It isn't a glowing referendum on where we are. Let's hope we can get a little more light into the government right now.
David, an 8-point win is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, it certainly had a lot of ground to come up from May 7th, but in this runoff election, that was better than what Mayor Webb and Mayor Pena faced in their second-term runoffs, but not their third-term runoffs. So, when you look at the final election results, what sticks out to you?
Well, it was an impressive win, as you said. Pena won his runoff for his first and only re-election by under 2 points. Webb by a more comfortable margin, but this was larger than that. I think, as Patty said, the vote on do you think Hancock is doing a good job was over 60% no and under 40% yes, but he was able to do enough damage to his opponent that, as negative campaigning often does, it drives down electoral participation in general. So I think he only got 8,000 more votes than he got the first time around, and her vote total only improved by about 15,000. So a lot of the Tate and Calderon voters stayed home. I can especially understand on the Calderon voters because if you liked her, Giellis and Hancock were just way more middle of the road than she was. So they maybe didn't have a choice, they thought. It's always better to win than to lose, but he won in a quite dishonorable way, and I think this reduces significantly the chance that he will be able to use this as a springboard to run for something else in the future. One thing that will be interesting to see is now we've had sort of the second major citywide election where somebody is really, in a demagogic way, playing the race card. The hardcore racist who ran against Diana DeGette in the Democratic primary last time got over 30%. Now, Hancock, who did it with a little bit more subtlety, now not quite as ridiculous as DeGette's opponent, here he comes in winning with 56% by doing that. So it will be interesting to see what lessons Crisanta Duran takes away from that in her challenge to DeGette in the 2020 Democratic congressional primary, and whether she decides to follow in these dishonorable steps of trying to inflame racial animosity.
Eric, I think back to this program it was about a week into the runoff campaign, and it was a week that I would characterize as the Tale of Two Cities week for Jamie Giellis. It was the best of times and worst of times. She came out on Monday with the rally with Tate and with Calderon. She had unified all the opponents. That was great. And I think 48 hours later, answering questions about the NAACP flub, the Tacos and Lowriders event, it felt like a lot of self-inflicted wounds that only cascaded for the rest of the campaign. You only have 4 weeks to build momentum, and that was the shot. Perhaps I'm being myopic about it. What do you think?
No, I think that second week of the runoff, when you and I actually taped the debate here, that didn't air for some period of time after, it was an awful week for Jamie Giellis. I think the third and fourth week were maybe slightly better, but the die was probably cast at that point. I think I've commented before, whether it's over a cup of coffee or sitting on a debate stage with these candidates, I don't know that I've ever encountered a less political person running for high political office than Jamie Giellis. That's not a criticism, it's not a compliment, it's just a statement of fact. It's not somebody with just raw, natural political instincts who sees everything through a political lens. I actually think she grew quite significantly into the role, particularly in the closing weeks. But a lot of these were unforced errors. A lot of these were somewhat gifts she gave to the Hancock campaign. And Lord knows they exploited them. It was not pretty, but politics is often not known for its artistry. It was an unrelenting pounding. We all, as citizens, sit around and condemn negative advertising and how awful negative advertising is. Well, I have a news flash. It works. It doesn't always work, but it very often works, and we saw it work in this case. There are other reasons. Hancock certainly had the superior ground game, superior work out in the neighborhoods, etc. To this notion of Michael Hancock calling this a job review, a review of his job performance, and that was part of his ongoing stump speech around town. If you really mean that, if this is a job review, I've never been in a job review where you come in and you spend 95% of the review discussion with your superior pounding somebody else who's happens to be also maybe a candidate for this job or whatever. I guess I'm just making the point of their advertising campaign certainly didn't reflect the notion that they wanted this to be a referendum on Michael Hancock's performance.